Hey, everybody. Today we're for podcast number 135. Today's podcast is titled, Do We Pretend to Not Have Trust Issues? Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. We are Dr. Pete and Sandy Lombardi. This is the Limitless Life Network podcast where we flesh out the limitations that are preventing you from reaching your goals and living the life that you are called to lead. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you all for your feedback this week. I'm thinking of one of you who's been sharing some of this in the workplace, and appreciate you encouraging us with that, and even talking about a book that you've been reading, Extreme Ownership. So I know you have read that as well, haven't you?
Yeah, great book. Yeah. Jocko Willink.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you get a chance, pick it up. All right. So, you got a backstory today for this?
This topic just kept coming up throughout the week, I think, for both of us in different situations and circles. So we've made a couple different points around the concept or the principle of trust.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny that you say. I was going somewhere else with the podcast earlier today. I had this other title all picked out, and Sandy's like, this came up in like 3 different ways. So it was just like, okay, I guess this is what we're going with today. So might as well get on with it.
Okay.
On with the show. What do you think?
Sure.
Okay. I think they're ready.
Okay. Point number 1. Trust is a foundational element to relationships.
Okay. So relationships are built on trust, and I really value relationships, period. Right. So I like a relationship where we can trust one another. Right. So my wife and I, we trust each other implicitly, and any other relationship, I have a great deal of trust for the people that I've hold in high regard in our relationship. So
we brought this up in our small group on Wednesday night. We brought our teens into that group. Typically it's just been the adults, but we decided for this few months that we would bring our teens into the group, and we're studying Proverbs, so wisdom. And we talked before we got started, like that one of the ground rules when you're in a small group is trust, and how do we keep trust, and it's confidentiality, and things we share in the group only are, not shared outside of the group. Right. Yeah. And so that's just one element of trust, but you break that and it's so difficult. We said to them, it will take time for you to want to share things that you trust we're going to keep in the group. So that's, as we've been doing this for years and years with adults, something that it does take time before you're comfortable, and you should be cautious with sharing personal information until you have a level of trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting how some people are very quick to share, and some people are not quick at all to share any personal information. I can think of one individual that we had in a small group for years, and this particular person never let us into their life as far as anything about their personal life. If there was anything said about their personal life, it was very superficial. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
which makes it difficult to really get to know each other until we are able to open up on some level.
Yeah, it's certainly harder to go deeper in a relationship without that level of trust, without knowing anything else, right? So, yeah. And that brings us to point number 2.
Okay. Carry-over crisis.
Okay, so I came up with this title for number 2, carry-over crisis. And this is where you have a situation where whatever happens in a relationship where somebody sours your trust, somebody breaks your trust, whatever they did, it doesn't really matter the particulars, but say you have lost trust in an individual that you trusted implicitly, and then they broke your trust. And you're usually going to be hurt. Mm-hmm. You're usually going to be upset, disappointed. It's another, emotion that you could feel. But now, when you go into a new relationship with someone else, whether it's somebody that if you're in the world of dating or something and you go into another relationship, the next person that you meet doesn't know anything about what's happened in the past. So you should go into that relationship fully objective, fully trusting as you did initially. But what ends up happening is that no matter how we try, how hard we try, in the back of our mind, there is this insecurity, this carryover, and it creates a problem. Because now, as you go into this new relationship, it's really difficult for you to be vulnerable, to share, to be forthcoming about information, even though the other person may be. But in that regard, also, maybe they won't just because you don't seem to be.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so the relationship is going to be a lot more slow to develop or maybe never develop.
All right, and that's you're giving an example of a personal relationship. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
but it
sure.
could be like a work situation. It could be a coworker that you got burnt by, or a boss that you felt didn't treat you fairly, or just lost your trust for some reason.
Hmm.
And you bring that, to the next position that you have, and maybe, affects how you work with those underneath you. And so it trickles into all areas.
Oh, it
Yeah.
certainly can. I mean, in the workplace, it's super common because if you're working with somebody, you have to be able to trust them.
Right.
Otherwise, the productivity level and the amount any team can do together is going to be far less if nobody's trusting anybody.
Right.
If everybody's looking over everybody's shoulder to see if they did something right or wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the carryover.
Point number 3, safe and not secure, not insecure.
Yeah, safe and not insecure. So we always think of, safe and sound, right? Safe and secure, safe and not insecure. And this is where a lack of trust leads to insecurities.
What would
Yeah.
be an example? You're thinking like a breach of trust.
So this is where, in a situation where, say, maybe a couple of individuals get together, and say maybe it's a coworker that they are talking about because maybe they have some quirky habits about them, or maybe they did something that was frustrating to them because it wasn't, taken all the way something wasn't handled the way it should have been handled. All right.
Okay.
And so these other two people are maybe chirping about this.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is now maybe that someone else could overhear some of this, or maybe some of this gets trickled back to them. And it develops a sense of insecurity now because and likewise, maybe if you start gossiping about someone else, then that person you're telling your gossip to may all of a sudden now become insecure. What do they say when I'm not around?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that level of insecurity, now you're, maybe right or wrong, it's not good for anybody. So you want to create an environment. Trust creates a safe environment. It creates a safe environment where you can be free to share, to be vulnerable. And with that comes a lot of growth. It comes a lot of connectivity, and just a lot more gets done in a positive light.
Right. Well, I think I can think of an organization I'm in, and it works. It's so much more effective when we have that mutual trust and respect. And I guess like we are, well, advocating, or, this is a group for our children. So if I am in good relationship and have a trust level with other parents, I'm going to really rely on them for key decisions that involve my child. And it just is a more impactful and successful organization if we have that level of trust, and I guess understanding and communication of values and what's important to us. And so all of that, I think, is part of developing this community of trust.
Yeah, and it's going to just lead to better outcomes. Yeah, very good.
Point number 4, step over issues erodes trust.
Okay, so we've talked about step over issues in the past, but this really comes down to difficult conversations. What's a difficult conversation? Well, that's a conversation that you know you should have, but you really don't want to have because you're not anticipating a great outcome from the person you need to talk to. So you're anticipating a response that may not be positive. Now, you don't know that because you
Right.
haven't had the conversation yet. So you may be creating all of this in your mind, and it may never, even if you have the conversation, just as soon as you started it, you may gain some new knowledge that clears things up, right away. But because you're not thinking like that, you're thinking emotionally, you're thinking about how they're going to handle this news that you have to tell them. Well, whatever it might be, you're not doing your job appropriately, you're not on time, whatever it might be, and you've got to address it, but you don't want to do it. So you just don't say anything. And then it's always there and you have to step over it. It's like something in your house that somebody spills like milk in the living room, but nobody wants to clean it up. So they just keep walking around it.
Ew.
Yeah. And so you have to step over it because after a while, the milk starts to, rot and get stinky and then it grows fungus and now it starts to get bigger and bigger.
Right. Well, that's the issue is when we step over something, it doesn't go away, just comes back again and again, year after year. And then the
Sure.
problem's probably even bigger than the one I stepped over in the first place.
Well, and it becomes harder and harder to address because you're not being forthright. You're not being honest with somebody.
Right.
So you're literally eroding their trust because, you're not being honest with them. You're not being forthcoming. And so that leads to all kinds of challenges. So if you could just go forth and have those conversations, it'll put to bed a lot of problems.
Right.
And how do you do that, right? That's the next question. It kind of brings us to point number
Yeah. 5.
Yeah.
So this is from Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight.
Okay. So this is one of those if then statements in the Bible. And I like these a lot because it tells you kind of what to do. And it also tells you what the outcome's going to be if you do it. So trust in the Lord with
All your heart.
Yeah, not some. So that indicates when it says all, that means like full commitment. So it's not just a some of the time, but all of the time. It's a full commitment to trust in the Lord. What does that mean? Trust in the Lord.
To have faith in. And I was thinking about this, like, how do you trust with all of your heart? There has to be relationship and time spent. So you are willing to trust. Trust is usually earned in a way. So how does God earn our trust? And I think that's his goodness and his faithfulness and his just undeniable truths. What he says is true. And so I think that is part of developing that trust with the Lord.
And I think you hit on it with a key word, time. So God's timeless. So he doesn't need more time, but we need time.
Yeah.
So that means that we need to spend time. We need to invest time with a relationship, trying to have that relationship. So if you don't spend a lot of time, if you don't invest that time, then it's going to be really difficult, more challenging to trust. Just like any relationship, right? So the more time you spend with people and the deeper that trust builds or grows because you just have never been let down. And that's what my experience has been with my relationship with Jesus Christ, is that I've never been let down. He's always exactly what he's supposed to be. He's never anything different. And that's how trust is built. It's through this time of consistency and reliability. So
Well, and I think like you just made that does take time because in the short term, you might be disappointed in the Lord because what you want for an answer, maybe to a prayer, the answer you get is not the answer that you were praying for and that you thought was best. But in time, I think you'll see that there is good in what the answer was. So that just takes time for that to, I guess, be
that's the next.
revealed to us.
Yeah, and that's the next part of this.
Okay, so lean not on your own understanding. Yes.
Okay.
So we need
So
his
this
understanding.
is the clarity of this, right? So we want to. Excuse me, I keep coughing into the microphone. I'm gonna clear my throat. Sorry about that. Lean not on your own understanding. Like we think we've got, we're pretty intelligent, right? We've weighed all the facts and we think about it and we make decisions, and you have to make decisions. I get that. But when you need to trust, right? Like when there has to be an element of trust, what would Jesus do, right? Lean not on your own understanding, but think about what would God do in this situation? God coming here as a man, walking on earth, how would he react to this situation? Okay? Probably with grace, probably with patience, probably with kindness, probably with gentleness, right? Probably with some wisdom.
Yeah. One of you reminded me of a previous podcast. We talked about a tactical pause. He might take a tactical pause.
Yeah, sure. Or he may not.
Right.
Because he's pretty smart. But, and so that's where, that's a real important thing to do here. Lean not on your own understanding. So in all your ways, submit to him. In how many ways?
All.
Okay, once again, this is like a full commitment to submit to him, which means that I'm going to remove myself from the equation, right? So I'm going to humble myself and allow him to take the lead.
Yeah.
Which is hard again for us to do if we've never practiced this before. If we don't have a trusting relationship, it's going to be really hard to submit to him. But the more time you spend, then the easier it is to submit to him, let him lead. And then what happens?
He will make your paths straight.
Okay, so straight paths are the fastest way to get from A to B, right? So instead of taking a convoluted, crooked course, right, which is confusing, which is frustrating, which is an energy drain, which leads to lots of decisions if there's lots of turns. And so wouldn't you rather have a straight path? Like here from A to B, like this is the direction I'm going to go. And there's a lot of peace in that. And so that's what he's offering you. But there's things that we have to do ahead of time.
Yeah.
Right? So I think this is such a simple couple of verses, but so helpful to be used day in and day out, every day of your life.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to add? While our dog is outside barking,
We
we're like,
hear it's distracting me.
I know it's distracting you. It's kind of funny. But anyway, anything else?
I don't think so. I hope we conveyed something that you'll take away this week and apply in your relationships.
We prayed for this podcast not to be terrible. So anyway, that's a wrap for this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. Be sure to tune in each and every week to stay connected and be inspired and keep moving toward your best life by stripping away your limitations. And we will see you guys back next week.
See you next week.